Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our research huddle entitled The Impact of Migration in the Philippines, What About Those Left Behind? I'd like to welcome all of you, especially our speaker, Mr. Neil Lomibao, and the audience joining us on site and online. Now, this is live stream on the BSP FB page for the information of everybody here. And this being informal, allow me just to introduce our speaker, and then he has the floor. Neil is Bank Officer 2 at the BSP Research Academy. He was part of the first cohort of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Young Professionals Program in 2020. Before entering government service, he was the first chairperson of the United Nations Youth Advisory Board from 2018 to 2020, advising all 18 United Nations agencies operating in the Philippines. He is one of the key signatories of the Philippines United Nations Partnership Framework for Sustainable Development 2019-2023, which represents the shared commitment between the government of the Philippines and the United Nations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Aside from this, he has worked as a researcher for various academic institutions, non-government organizations, and pharmaceutical companies here and abroad. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Pharmacy from the University of the Philippines, Manila, a Master of Science in Innovation and Business degree from the Asian Institute of Management, and currently is taking up a Master of Development Economics degree from the UP School of Economics. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker, Mr. Neil Lumibao.
Wala talaga siyang ano na.
So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all our participants joining us here in person and in online. Particularly, I would like to acknowledge first the presence, our governor and MBM Bruce. At the same time, our guest participants who is joining online, Director Escudero from the External Legislative Liaison Office from the Senate, and Mayor Joey Fuentebella from Sagnay Camarines Sur. So I'm Neil Lumibao, and I am here to present to you my research about the impact of migration here in the Philippines. What about those left behind? This research actually is a work in progress, as you may know. I've already presented the initial findings in the Philippine Population Association Scientific Conference way back in April, and in the Women Deliver Conference in Kigali, Rwanda last July. I would like to acknowledge first the BSP Research Academy, particularly our senior researchers for peer reviewing the results of my research, to our research experts panel, particularly Dr. John Nye for providing his initial comments on how would I move forward, the Philippine Statistics Authority for providing the data, and the UP Population Institute for providing their comments in my research. So just a disclaimer, the views expressed in this presentation are those of mine and not of the BSP. Right? All right. So this is the outline of my presentation. I would start first with introduction, stating some key facts, the research questions, the data and methodology, results and discussion. Then I would conclude and provide you the recommendation that this research is proposing and the current steps that I'm taking to improve this research of the particular topic that I've chosen. So just an introduction, Filipinos see migration as a way to improve their economic situation, according to the PSA and the UP Population Institute. Majority of Filipinos who are migrating here or abroad are doing it for work and to send their remittances back to their families for food and educational expenses. The effects of migration actually on household members have been studied by various researchers, but usually they just highlight that migration actually improves the household income due to remittances. However, most studies, starting in the 1980s, are focused on international migration, mainly because this is when we start to send thousands of Filipinos in the Middle East to work. Only a few, if none, are focused on both internal and international movement. In fact, majority of our migrants in the Philippines are considered internal migrants and not international migrants. And this leads me to wonder that not much emphasis actually has been raised on those they left behind. In fact, according to the National Migration Survey, 59% of their sample population can be considered as lifetime migrants, wherein the location of their birth is different from their current location during the conduct of the survey. 85% of the sample population did not actually move from 2013 to 2018. And unsurprisingly, of course, regions with better economic outlook receive high number of in-migrants, as we can see in NCR, in Calabarzon, in Bulacan, and other metro cities in the country. The opposite is observed for regions with high out-migration, particularly in Bicol and in Leyte. There is also a recorded equal number of domestic and foreign remittance transactions. However, we know that foreign remittance transactions has higher value than domestic ones. The National Migration Survey, or the NMS, actually asked their respondents where do they usually use the remittances they receive. And most of them use it for food and education, and only a little for savings and investment. The NMS also observed that there's a difference in the behavior of allocation of remittances being sent by our migrants. If a migrant is a male, he usually allocate more on food and education and only a little of 2% for savings and investments. But if a migrant is a female, she actually allocates more on savings and investment despite receiving lower salaries and sending back lower remittances. So these led me to ask, what about those they left behind? If they're sending remittances, if we're moving people across the country and abroad, what's happening to those they left behind? And thus, I would like to measure actually the impact of migration from 2013 to 2018 on members left behind using the microdata of the 2018 National Migration Survey. When I presented this in Iloilo way back in April, they recognized that I'm one of the first, if not the few, who actually utilize this type of data set first in the country. And thus, I think this research actually provides a lot of insights and contribution to the literature. So the 2018 National Migration, I used the 2018 National Migration Survey data and focus on analyzing households with members aged 5 to 22 years old, which is equal to 8,123 households. And then I narrowed it down to 5 to 18 years old for a robustness check, which is equal to 7,095 households. These age groups are assumed to be usually left behind because they are expected to dedicate their time to study and not participate in the labor force. So given the data set and the limitations that I got in the microdata, these, data points are of actual importance that I identified that actually could measure the impact of migration. So with that, we can measure the impact of migration based on household members studying. While the National Migration Survey was just conducted in 2018, we need to create a 2013 baseline or 5 years prior because the National Migration Survey indicated the movement of people within 5 years. We need to create a baseline for 2013. And using the data of the years of studying indicated by all respondents of the survey and age of each respondent, we could actually identify if they're studying or not in 2013. So with this, assumptions and data manipulations and cleaning, I decided to use a difference and difference methodology wherein YIGT as the dependent variable indicating the percentage of household members studying age 5 to 22 years old. And we're particularly interested in the interaction term, MIT, which is the movement of people or the exposure of household to migration between 2013 to 2018. I clustered the model among 17 regions to account for standard error because as we know, there are richer regions and poorer regions to actually isolate the real impact of migration. At the same time, the DID or the difference in difference assumes parallel trends wherein in the absence of the treatment, in this case, migration, the treatment and the control group will experience the same results. And thus, we could actually quantify the impact of migration. After running the model, I actually got the following results, wherein migration in general has a negative impact on the percentage of school-age members of the household that are studying. What does this mean? It means that a member of the household who are school age, meaning 5 to 22 or 5 to 18, in this case for a robustness check, actually stops or do not start to study if a household usually is exposed to migration. It got me wondering why is it like that? Before studying the paper, my initial hypothesis was that education or people should send their children more to school given that they have higher income. And that's why I've substituted for another model the following. So I substituted if a household has a female migrant or a male migrant. I separated them into different models and saw that female migrants tend to have more pronounced negative impact than those with a male migrant. When a household has at least a female migrant, it has a more significant negative impact to the percentage of school-age members of the household going to school. In fact, there are a lot of articles already saying this kind of phenomenon, wherein such as of Taroja and Fernando in 2013, about the negative effect on the school performance of children of OFWs, particularly of OFW mothers. This results actually extends their finding in a more quantitative sense. The negative impact could actually stem from the less monitoring on children if a parent actually migrates. And actually, what the NMS actually observe is the difference in behavior of our migrants as well. If we have a male migrant, he usually leave their child or his children to his spouse. But if a migrant is a female, she usually leaves her child to her parents or the children's grandparents. So the difference in behavior can become a factor as well. So this paper argues that the increase in household income, despite of the remittances that these migrants are actually sending back to their families, does not guarantee sending children to school. Male migrants often give more to allocate more for education than female migrants. So to conclude, there is a negative impact of both internal and international migration in terms of making more educated and productive household members. The impact is more pronounced on households that have at least a female migrant than those that have at least a male migrant. Since women are more migratory than male and continue to dominate migration numbers, in fact, in the recent OFW numbers, majority of our OFWs are actually women. These results have important implications to policies and the population's future productivity. This research actually recommend, however, that further studies should be conducted and additional national migration surveys should be conducted as well to supplement data limitations of the current 2018 National Migration Survey and to create deeper analysis using other impact evaluation methods. So with all the comments that I've received during the past two presentations that I've got, I am currently further disaggregating the data and test for different impact evaluation methods, such as propensity score matching and testing specific population groups to shed more light on migration in the country. At the same time, together with one of our research experts panel member, Dr. John Nai, we are collaborating on research as well because there's actually another trend in the Philippines that there's a shift as identified by the NMS that Philippine migration is shifting from rural to urban to rural migration. Usually this type of behavior is observed in developed countries such as in the US, but in developing countries like for example in China and in India, they still see rural to urban migration. But in the Philippines, we're starting to see urban to rural migration now, even though that we're a developing country. So with that, I thank you very much for your time, and I'm hoping to hear your thoughts and comments as I improve my research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neil. The floor is now open to questions. For those joining us online, please post your questions on the chat box, and they will relate to me. Um, Big,
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have several questions. The first one is, what is your a priori expected relationship between? Yeah, my first question is, what is your expected a priori relationship between migration and percentage of school-age members of the households that are studying? And then number two, can you explain the importance of the parallel trend assumption in difference in differences? And then the last one is, I want to ask if you take into full consideration the complex design of the 2018 National Migration Survey. The sample selection methodology of the National Migration Survey followed a two-stage stratified sampling methodology. And by not taking into account the complex design of the survey, statistical inferences are done with the assumption that the data collection is done using simple random sampling, SRS. Computationally, this is convenient and conforms with the IDID requirements of most econometric procedures. However, as pointed out by Deaton, it is theoretically flawed when complex design was used in the survey. Thank you.
Sir Vic, thank you for that question. So first for the a priori assumption. So as I mentioned a while ago in my presentation, I expected way before I started this paper that the percentage of school age children would actually increase, given that migrants often give back remittances, and almost a third of their remittances are allocated for education expenses. However, it shocked me that this actually, when I conducted this exercise, that even though they're allocating a third of their remittances, there's an observed decline in the number of percentage of school age children going to school or maybe stopping to school. So that's my initial hypothesis during that time when I started writing the paper. On your second paper, on your second question regarding ah, the parallel trends assumption. So the parallel trends assumption. So given the limitations of the data, we only have one data point, no, the 2018 National Migration Survey, and I just worked back in order for us to identify whether the children in that specific household is studying or not. So that's why I specifically chose 5 to 22 or 5 to 18. So technically, if a 5-year-old was born in 2013, technically he or she should be studying in 2018 at 5 years old. So when I work back, so at least we could see already if uh, he or she is studying or not. So that's it. So with that kind of limitation, and that's why I use the difference and difference model actually assumes the parallel trends, wherein if we divide the groups into a treatment and a control group, given that both groups would not have a treatment variable, which is migration in this sense, the treatment and the control group after 5 years should have the same results. So technically, if the control and the treatment would have not migrated or do not experience migration, uh, they both would have an increasing number or a decreasing number of percentage of school age children going to school. So that's it. So when you put the treatment variable into the model, that's where the difference of between the treatment and the control would be calculated. And the difference in terms of the impact of that would be the impact of migration in the sense. So that's the most that I could do given the data that we have. And yeah, that's it. So, and lastly, for the complex sampling of the NMS, I actually consulted the UPPI, the UP Population Institute, who actually implemented the survey when I presented this in Iloilo. And then they told me that even though they use a different sampling method, uh, I used a subset of their original sample. So it might be safer for me to actually use the subset without any more what do you call this, data manipulation, but just go directly to the analysis. So that's their advice. But the catch is I couldn't generalize it in the whole population because I need to readjust the weights, and it's very hard to readjust the weights of a subsample of the entire data set. So the main conclusion here is that the sample population of the survey is the ones that we're trying to observe. So that's the main premise of the paper.
Bruce, thanks. First, I'm sorry we were late. The reason we were late was that we went to the wrong place. I think the seminar should be held every week in the same place. Don't change the location. Anyway, but I'm glad you're able to disaggregate between women and men migrants. Are you able to disaggregate between the children? Because I would assume that the impact on college age kids would be different from younger age groups. Are you able to do that?
Sir, I tried to disaggregate it a little bit per age group. However, I yielded insignificant results because the sample set per age group is actually very small already. So that's why I opted to generalize it in 5 to 18 and 5 to 22 years old.
So there's a large subset of students in the Philippines who leave home to study, right? So presumably they don't need as much monitoring as younger kids.
Yes, sir. They actually, I think based from the observation in the microdata, they actually counted them in the household as a household member. So with the computations that I made, I assumed that even though that specific member went out of their house or their location to study elsewhere, they could be identified as a school age member of the household.
Thank you.
Thank you, MB Bruce.
Governor.
I think this is the results are very striking to me. I completely unexpected as it was for you. Uh, it it leads to deeper questions about the role of women in nurturing children. Uh, I don't know whether there's any data on this, but maybe a study in which you look at the effects of education of the children uh, when women are present in the household, not just the mother, but maybe a grandmother, an aunt, maybe. The presence of a woman in the household, how does that affect the education of children? And maybe if you could, even for a smaller sample, look at that issue. I think that would be interesting.
Thank you, Gov. Actually, yes, it's quite astonishing that actually I found out this kind of result. And I'm actually taking a look at that. So when I presented this and shared these results, actually when I went to Kigali in Rwanda, they actually initially gave a good impression that oh, women are very important. So that's why this type of study is actually branching out, as I mentioned a while ago. So on my first step, together with Dr. Nai, we're actually asking first, and with the data limitations that we have, especially in the Philippines, we're actually branching out on a different set of question first, and maybe to do such study that what we are recommending, we need to, maybe I could, I'm planning just to um, like a cross country observation and study, because actually the Philippines actually is quite different because we're sending lots of women abroad, especially OFWs. At the same time, there's an ongoing study as well by the UN that um, boys are actually less educated than girls now in the Philippines. No? It's quite different. The case in the Philippines is quite different. So that's one of the data limitations that we got. We're different from the rest of the world, but we also do not have data to conduct the study. But rest assured that once there's a data, I will try to extend this research. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. We have questions from the online audience. From a faculty member of the UP School of Statistics. First question. The model assumes 2013 and 2018 measurements for the panel data. However, the scope of the study looks at households who move for the very first time in the period 2013 to 2018. In short, not strictly 2013. How was this addressed, or were you able to identify the particular year that, for example, 2013, at which said household moved for the very first time? This is because DID requires panel data so that the baseline conditions are controlled for.
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, that's one of the main limitations as well of the NMS. That's why I am planning to do a propensity score matching to address that kind of limitation in the results. So in this exercise, I just assumed that whether or not they move 2013 or 2014 or 2015, they they will be counted to be exposed to the treatment. So that's why I particularly highlight the sign of the coefficient rather than the value of the coefficient to actually be more specific on the negative impact rather than how much is the impact and how many children are being affected.
All right. Second question, in the generalized DID model, there is a time dummy, letter T, and time fixed effects, the theta. Given there are only two time periods, 2013 and 2018, how are they different?
So the time fixed effects, if I can remember it correctly, so that the T there is the 2013. The T is this is a binary variable. So the 2013 is 0, and then the 2018 is 1. And so the time fixed effects is one of the assumptions of the DID that even if that given the absence of treatment between 2013 to 2018, the time would not affect the outcome of the control and the treatment group. So technically, I'm more interested on the MIT, the interaction term, because usually the time there is uh, more of um, tagging if a household would be exposed to the treatment or not.
Okay. He offers finally some suggestions. You use clustered standard errors to account for spatial autocorrelation. You may also look into standardized errors such as Nui West, Dishkol Cray, or Beckcats, and check if they have similar results as a robustness check.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, yes, thank you.
And there's a separate question from Dr. Ramon Moreno. Are you able to control for household income levels? Low-income households may be more affected by immigration.
So I didn't control for that because of the data limitation as well of the NMS. So the NMS do not have a complete picture of the income of all households there. And it's hard for me to actually match it with the FIES or the Family Income and Expenditure Survey, which has a more complete result of the household income. That's why right now what I'm planning to do is to disaggregate the data and check on different types of subsamples in that exercise whether I would see and what's the profile of these types of subsets and what's the impact of migration on these and whether we could actually see if these households are actually poor or rich or middle class or upper middle class because we could use other aggregates of observation such as for example if they live in the metro or what kind of barangay they're living in. So that's the type of disaggregation that I'm planning to do as well. And there's a lot of disaggregation that needs time to actually do.
All right, thank you. Other questions from the floor?
This is actually a suggestion. Utilizing propensity score matching, I think that's in the right direction. But I will also suggest that you combine propensity score matching and DID.
Ye-
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what I'm planning first is to conduct the propensity score matching or the PSM and then rerun the model, the DID model afterwards. So technically, the PSM actually matches the different observations in the data set, which is thousands in my case. So that's what I'm planning to do next to strengthen the observation, sir. Thank you.
Our first commenter online just wants a clarification. The question is, how is T different from theta?
Ah.
Is it different from your baseline effects?
Maybe I could go back to my
The
slide
slide,
in the
yeah.
model. Yeah. Yeah, the model. Let me check. Okay. So the T there is just denoting time. So I use T there. So the T there actually is just the the time for the interaction term. So when I ran Stata, the MT or the interaction term would produce MI and T separately. So even though that they're producing a beta 1 and a beta 2, the coefficients are not does not actually measure the impact of migration. However, the theta or the time invariant fixed effect capturing constant effects related to each period, this is one of the assumptions of the DID model. So this one, the alpha, okay, and the theta actually is part of the parallel trends assumption. So given, as I mentioned a while ago, given that without the treatment, so the outcome of the dependent variable YIGT would just be the same for the control and treatment groups. So this alpha and theta there are the ones that are using or are measuring the assumptions of the difference and difference model.
All right. Other questions from the floor, please? There being none, let's give a warm hand of applause for our presenter, Mr. Neil Lomibao.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us today in the Research Huddle. I'd like to ask the speaker and the attendees to join me here in the front for a group photo. Yeah. All right. Yeah, please join us for the group photo. Dito na. Um, we're also asking those who have joined us online to open their videos so that they can join us in the group photo.
Actually, yes, sir. They identified with the MMS na they're actually considered as migrants.
All right. Okay, please join us. Open your video. We'll be taking the photo. Ready? Okay. Yeah, we have a sizable number. Good. Dami. Very good, Neil. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in the next Research Huddle. And we will request our attendees to answer the feedback survey form, which will be posted. Our next Research Huddle will be entitled uh, Remittance of Overseas Filipinos in the Time of COVID-19, Spillovers and Policy Imperatives by Mr. Francis C. Maliwat, Bank Officer 2 and Research Associate at the BSP Research Academy. Thank you. Thank you very much.